Hello, 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 hello. It's your girl, Brandy Janae. I'm back with another live. And listen. I know y'all say you're gonna look at the caption or and say, like, what? Is this girl talking about something from 2 years ago? 3 years ago at that? And yes, the answer is yes. Yes, she is. Um, I'm gonna tell you the truth. So, of course, I consider myself a housewife expert. Okay, self-proclaimed, but I've been watching Housewives for so long that I feel like I know them. Right? I know them. I know the shows. I know the formula. I know the things before it's gonna happen. X, Y, Z. All of those things. However, what brought me to this particular live and having this particular live is I am sick of it. Okay. I was on my Instagram just scrolling, minding my business, like we all do. Okay. And I happened to come across a clip from a previous housewife, a previous New York housewife, Miss Dorinda Medley. And while it was a clip, and of course, I did not listen to the whole podcast, this clip specifically is discussing the reboot of New York Housewives. And, as a person who has watched all of the housewives, including New York Housewives, I just really am sick of them just kind of breezing over the real reason why New York Housewives had a reboot. And before I get into discussing anything going on with the New York Housewives currently with the current season, I wanted to go back. Like because it's a hair in my tail. Okay. It's a hair in my tail what happened that season 13. Um and after seeing Dorinda's response, I just couldn't help myself. I did jump down in the comment and I commented in the comments. We're gonna talk about it all. And then kind of I had a person respond to me and pretty much was arguing with me about what I said. And so that caused me to say, you know what? I'm gonna just go on my own live and have this discussion with all of YouTube. Okay. So let's just start off with the clip so we can see exactly where we start. Okay. Here we go.
Of one and replace it with the other. Huge decision, right? I personally think that was a tremendous jump. I have a different feeling about. I know there's a lot of maybe other cast members that feel like it was them or us. I don't. I think they made an executive decision to, get rid of one and replace it with the other. Huge decision, right? I personally think that was a tremendous jump, and it was tricky because we have such deeply loyal, committed fans that grew up with these women that I think it was a lot for them to all of a sudden say, now you see them, now you don't, and present these new girls who are beautiful and talented and really the new New York.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what she had to say about the reboot. Okay, if you don't know, New York Housewives ended season 13 with that cast, and when they returned for season 14, excuse me, I might have the seasons wrong. They might have ended season 12 and returned season 13 with a whole new cast. It was a straight reboot, and ever since that reboot, the whole question is, are we liking the new cast? Now, let me just give my opinion about the new cast and get that out the way. The new cast is fine. At least they were that first season. They're kind of struggling this season, and it's really because of some of the subject matters that are going on the season. But we're going to talk about that on another live. The reason why we are here is discussing why that reboot took place. Okay. Go back to season 12 that aired in 2021. And if you remember back in 2021, We are fresh out of the pandemic, or coming off of the pandemic, kind of getting back accumulated to going back to work, returning back to work, returning back to school, returning back to what the new normal would be at this point after the pandemic. But if you remember what was going on socially, and this was happening all over, not just at Bravo, but in our personal companies as well. During the pandemic, there was a lot of racial tension going on. And of course, everybody really, there were a lot of emotions, okay, a lot of emotions. But what companies did during that time, because those tensions were so high, and for me, I feel like at the highest level that I had experienced in my lifetime, being 44 years old. So what the companies decided to do, Bravo included, was scramble to figure out ways to make everything what is termed inclusive. Okay. Part of being inclusive would be to add African American or Black cast members. This is the tune that Bravo took, was to add African American cast members to those housewife franchises in which there had not been one. This happened on Housewives of Beverly Hills with the introduction of Garcelle Beauvoir. This also happened with New York Housewives, and the introduction of Ebony K. Williams. Let's get to the cast photo just so you can see. Okay, Ebony K. Williams would be that pretty young lady right at the bottom left. Okay. So, as I said, all the companies, this is not anything new going on at just Bravo. If you, whatever company you work for during this time, you know you were probably getting an overflow of emails about inclusion and diversity. And so it can be annoying because most of the time, the people that are in charge of doing these things are usually, they're not diverse, in who they are. They're just the people that hold this position, and they're the ones that are in charge of placing the diverse people into the company. So let's bring that, goes right into New York Housewives and the introduction of Ebony K. Williams. Okay. Now, the problem that season with Ebony was Ebony and Ramona. These two really went at it the whole season. Okay. That season, let me back it up before we go that far, because the season was a disaster. The reboot was necessary. The reboot happened. I want to be as politically correct as I can. So let me gather my thoughts. The reboot happened because Bravo did not want to go back and rehash the things that happened during this season. And there was a lot. Let me start off with saying, as an African American who's watched the Housewives from the beginning, and that means when I say from the beginning, that means I started watching Housewives from day one. As soon as Real Housewives of Orange County came out, released, was playing on TV, I was watching it. I watched them release each and every Housewife franchise. After that, again, love the Housewives, always have. And this season was a season of contention for me for multiple reasons. The very first reason is this: nobody asked them to go and add somebody into that cast, right? The cast that they had and had always had, I mean, nothing was really wrong with it. Of course, they plugged in new cast members after Bethany. Bethany came back about 3 times, but they never really could find a girl that really meshed well in Bethany's place with those other cast members, which would be Ramona, Sonia, Countess Luann, well, I'm calling her Countess Luann, but Luann, well, Dorinda was not on season 12. She was put on ice, which is interesting that she has so much to say about the reboot because you weren't even a part of that last season. So you watched it like the rest of us, and clearly you ignored everything that happened, much like the company did, much like Bravo TV did, much like Andy did, and much like companies do when it comes down to y'all messed up, okay? And instead of being honest about what you did to mess up, you want to come back, erase it all, and act like it didn't happen. I'm not for it. Every time it come up about this reboot, I'm going to be down in the comments reminding the people why this reboot even exists. So whether you like it or not, it's not even the case. We could go ahead and demand that conversation that we get with every other housewife franchise. Even in the middle of a pandemic, they figured out a way to do the reunion virtually for Atlanta Housewives. So there was absolutely zero reason why there should not have been a reunion that season of Real Housewives of New York. However, because this is how you know reality TV is real. At the bottom line of not having a reunion, the decision was made because of the subject matters that would have had to been discussed. And that was because of the events that took place during the season that was filmed and is on demand for you to go watch. I'm going to give you an episode to go watch. If you haven't watched Real Housewives of New York and you're wondering what I'm talking about, I'll tell you to go to one episode. And this is the episode that is the reason for the whole reboot. And it is the Black Shabbat dinner. This is the reason why single-handedly New York Housewives did not have a reunion that year, and New York Housewives had a complete reboot a whole year after that season was abruptly ended, okay? And I say abruptly ended because it did not end with a reunion. Once they got done filming, they just washed their hands of the whole thing. Now, again, let me start off. Let me go back to the fact that I watch all of the Housewives, okay? And as an African American viewer, I go up for, okay, all the time. However, I am okay with watching certain things and not questioning why certain people are a part of the cast, why the cast looks a particular way. Orange County, Jersey, and New York Housewives are, even Beverly Hills, to be quite honest. I'm going to throw them in, even though when they found Garcelle Beauvais, because she's an actress, because she frequents in Beverly Hills and is a part of that culture, that suited her to be added into Beverly Hills Housewives. But that's not what we're talking about. Going back to New York, okay? We're talking about companies scrambling to find someone because they want to be included in being diverse, and they weren't. And also asking, I'm going to speak and tell them that it was never even necessary. I never looked at New York Housewives in all the years that I watched them and thought to myself, man, when are they going to find a Black girl to put on here? Man, I really wish they had an African American. The reason why is because I'm intelligent enough to watch certain things. I'm intelligent enough to watch them in the manner in which they are presented. And I'm okay with the group that was presented. The group of women that was presented were from the Upper East Side. They were highfalutin. Countess Luann came in as a countess. These are the girls that made Bethany Frankel feel like she was the lowest on the totem pole. And at the time, maybe she had been. But this is the way that they treated her, was like they never thought that she would end up with more money than all of them. So I'm saying this all to say, I understood the characters and the individuals that I was looking at. So I did not feel that there was anything ever missing. And I wish that companies or Bravo would have seeked out that information before they took it upon themselves to go find Miss Ebony K. Williams, who is declarated, intelligent, beautiful. Okay. Um, and and basically mess up the whole thing, mess up the church's money is what they did with it. And all of a sudden, now Ebony K. Williams, who's a first-time housewife, left New York Housewives, and because with her exit, there was a co-cast reboot, she's carrying that failure on her back. And it is not her fault. She had no business there. Nobody had any business reaching out to her and convincing her that her presence was needed in that ensemble cast. And that is the problem again, because whoever made the decision, I'm sure, didn't look like me or Ebony, probably looked a little more like Ramona. And with that being said, your mental, you can't separate the two. You don't know that there are people who live in this world every day and they okay with some of the things that happen because we understand. Like we look at Love and Hip Hop if we want to see an all-black cast in New York. We look at Love and Hip Hop New York. We're not talking about the subject of what it is going on the show, but we're talking about the cast members and what we want to see, right? If we want to see all of that, there are shows we can go and watch for that. They should have left that cast alone. And they should have left Miss Ebony K. Williams alone. Because now, with this one season, again, she is carrying the failure of that cast on her back by herself because they're too scared to call these ladies back to the couch and have that conversation about that Shabbat dinner that they need to have. Here's the comment I left under Bravo TV's reel on Instagram. Okay. So let me go to my first comment. It got to be on here. Okay, there we go. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so my comment says, "Oh my God, I am so sick of y'all tiptoeing around this topic. It was the dinner. It was that dinner. The Black Jewish dinner was a disaster, and that was not a subject they wanted to revisit. So they had to get rid of everyone and start over. Same as they do with Black history, act like it didn't happen." I had a person come under me, and I guess this kind of got under their skin. So Ebony was the disaster that caused them to get rid of everyone. They could have just paused the show for a year and got rid of her and Leah while they were at it. Okay, I told you she's carrying the whole disaster of the show on her back. That dinner wasn't all that different from the previous car crashes they had on the show in the past. The level of drunk Sonia Morgan was at that was pretty bad, talking about at the dinner, and Ramona Singer's behavior wasn't any different to any other scene she ever was in. Now you just reminded me of all the crazy we were missing out on because of Ebony. You see that? Because of Ebony. And it's not because of Ramona, right? It's not because of her uncomfortability to discuss diverse issues at a table the way she should have been able to. That's not the reason. It was Ebony's fault. Okay, not really. They knew that Ebony was the one and only catalyst, but they couldn't get rid of her because it would have looked PC, politically correct, for Bravo. The echo chamber of "they are just racist" wasn't the PR they were interested in. And let's face it, nobody is watching brain dead housewives shows for lessons in human society or history. Okay, now see, that was a loaded comment. And that is from somebody who clearly watched the show, right? So let's go ahead with Ebony K. Williams' introduction. to the housewives, okay? First, let me go ahead and show you I went over to Kempire and I found the trailers from that season. I'm gonna show you the part 1 and part 2 of the trailers. Now, everything that you're gonna see in the trailer, it happened. And it's going to speak to what that last comment was talking about. Like, people don't really see that there was anything wrong that happened on that season, again, outside of Ebony K. Williams being introduced to the cast. However, there's a bigger thing that happens, because anytime it is dealing with then it seems like it's easy to overlook all of the other problematic things that happen, and especially during the dinner. So that is the episode, excuse me, that is the episode that, if you want to go back and reference what episode I think single-handedly, because without this episode, Ebony probably wouldn't be on the Housewives, but Luann, Sonia, and Ramona would still be there. Those three for sure. Had that dinner not happened, Sonia showed her butt, and Ramona showed all of her butt. Her true colors came out. She was visibly upset with what was going on at that dinner. And nothing was going on except people sharing their experiences. But because it was experiences being shared from a different culture, and a culture that Ramona did not know about and was not wanting to understand, she continued to interject her grievances around how people have treated her different. Now, like the reason why people do think Ebony K is the catalyst is because, did Ebony take things too far during that season? Absolutely. I'm not really sure what was said to Ebony to get her to sign on. And it sounds, or at least it looked like, from watching, it looked like possibly somebody let Ebony know that she was coming into the cast to be diverse and inclusive. And so Ebony did take the responsibility on her back, to want to educate the ladies about Black America. She took the ladies to Harlem. They had a dinner. She did a lot of a couple things with the ladies in order to educate them, okay, about the Black experience. That's the best way I can put it. And what I think Ebony went wrong is, not everybody is interested. Same as what I'm saying about the fact that they never needed to add an African American to the cast, because nobody was interested in that. And that's the reason why it turned out to be a disaster. And with all good intentions, Ebony K. Williams is a lawyer. She is smart. She is sharp. And I believe that is what she wanted to represent during her time on The Housewives. And again, she also just took it upon herself to be the one that, well, I'm gonna show you how to do this, and I'm gonna take you here, and I'm gonna teach you about history, Black history. And like I said, it's totally understandable that not everybody is interested. Let me get the numbers. So that is season 12, okay? No, is it 12? No, it is not 12. It is season 13. So I was right. Season 13. And let's go to what? Let's see. What? All right. Season 13, and you're going to look at episode 14 and episode 15. Okay. Those are the episodes from the Black Shabbat dinner. And everything that I'm telling you in this live, you will see it in that video. Again, it was the most horrible dinner, and there have been some horrible dinners on Housewives across all franchises. That includes Teresa throwing a table. That includes on Beverly Hills, somebody threw a glass across the table to one of the ladies. Like, it's been some wild stuff that goes on these Housewives. I mean, Portia dragged Kenya right on the reunion stage by her head. It's been some wild things. And with that being said, you gotta know that something real deep, something that they don't want to open up had to happen on that season for them to just cut it and throw it all on the floor and never return back to it. And actually, then everybody else seems to be responsible for cleaning it up. Like, well, of course it was an executive decision, Dorinda, because they did not want to discuss that dinner at that reunion. Another thing, because watching that dinner, you see Ramona not be able to listen to anyone, not that she ever did. But again, she gets visibly uncomfortable as the people around the table are wanting to explain what the purpose of Shabbat dinner is, when they are wanting to explain what the purpose in calling this a Black Shabbat dinner. She was very upset about that, about differentiating that it was a Black Shabbat dinner. Like, why it just can't be a dinner? And it's like, well, they wanted to point out certain similarities in the Black experience in reference to a Jewish experience. And we know how, when we speak about those things, how they go left. And I'm not talking about the Black experience. So it's comical to me that anybody would turn around and think that one young lady, with all of the things that go on Housewives, one young lady would have the power to get them to throw the whole scene away, the whole season away. That's not true. It is made to look that way. But the problem is, if you got those ladies back on that reunion stage and you started to talk about that dinner yet again, you're not able to control what comes out of people's mouths, okay? And especially Ramona Singer. And so if you got her back on that reunion stage, and if she became as flustered and frustrated and uncomfortable as she was at that dinner, she was going to say something that would have got the whole network canceled, okay? Because it was all over her body language. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And it was really just all around this subject matter of talking about other cultures that are not hers. She wanted to compare every story to some grievance that happened in her life. Oh, well, when I went to college, none of the people wanted to talk to me because I was Catholic and they thought this and that. And it's like, girl, nobody talking about that. Like, we sorry that happened to you while you was in college. And, yeah, nobody should be treated that way. But these are not the same things. And the fact that she couldn't let anybody get it out, of course, Sonia gets drunk the whole time. Luann is not drinking, which I guess she wished she was on that dinner. And Ebony couldn't control none of the girls because they were sick and tired of her, right? They were sick and tired of her dragging them to teach them about Black culture when nobody asked them. That's why I love the name of my podcast, because it's called Who Asked for This? Who asked for that? Nobody. Nobody asked for it. Nobody needed it. And I'm sure Ebony did not need it. Let's look at the trailers that was released for that season. because you'll see a bunch of chaos.
Real Housewives of New York City. Go, Leah! Go, Leah! She's getting more action than a toilet seat. This is how it is to have a walker when I get older. We look so hot. We actually look really hot. Welcome to Harlem.
I like Ebony a lot.
Ooh, you can tweet! I'm not Toni Morrison in this bitch. I can't be teaching y'all everything. Diana. No, I'm Michelle. I get my help wrong.
She says she got her help wrong. The help comment was a little triggering for me.
Here's to hospitality assistants.
I have more education, frankly, than anybody at this table.
Don't come into my house and tell me I don't have an education.
I can leave your house, Lou.
Oh my God, my ears are hurting. Meet Garth.
Oh, no wonder Lou acts so happy.
Garth. It's always Garth. Hey, Garth. Oh, Jesus. How are you? Picks up on the first ring.
All right, here we are.
Welcome to Salem, bitches. Stop the drinking. Get real. I can't be around this.
She's taking it too far.
Don't overstep your boundaries.
I will step wherever the I want to.
You're preaching. That's gaslighting. You know what? You're gaslighting me.
Why do you have to be in everyone's business like a Karen? Do you understand what I'm saying? Not really.
He was my guy. He was never
Yes,
your
he
guy.
was. And a couple of my other guys have been with you.
If you don't want to be here and listen, get the out.
What happened to class? Elegance.
His dick is bigger than his balls. That's honestly what we really need.
Okay, here we go, Leo. Here we go.
Damn, girl. Elegance and class. Where did it all go?
In with the love.
You're a fucking hoe. You're a hoe. You're a hoe. You're a hoe. Biggest hoes ever.
Funny, right? Yeah. All of those things happen. And so let's be clear. New York never had a race issue. Let's be clear. They have a class issue. And sometimes I think people get that confused. The class issue is the fact that they started with Bethany. Bethany started with them. Bethany was not married. Bethany was starting her career off. She was a struggling celebrity chef. And we ended up watching her company blow up and sell it to Jim Beam. That is what happened during her first 4 seasons, I guess 4 to 5. I think it took for all of that to happen. And ever since then, even with Leah being one of the youngest, Tinsley before her, being one of the youngest cast members, they would kind of haze her, is a good word. And really it was because of her youth, because she was not as reserved as they were. I think that had to do a lot with her age and her generation. And so they gave her a lot of flack for it. So again, the issue at New York Housewives was never race. It was always class. And we can go back to Miss Countess Luann with her Class with the Countess, I think was the book she came out with after her first season. Only 2, if you go to the Ultimate Girls Trip, because that's where they took those girls, all but Ebony K. But they took those girls over to Ultimate Girls Trip, and on Ultimate Girls Trip, Luann ends up sleeping with one of the house mates, or one, you know how you have staff in the house that helps you. She ended up sleeping with one of them right on camera. Now this lady, how far we have come from you writing a book called Class with the Countess. Was that in the book? Like how you go out of town and find some random dude to sleep with in a house full of your other female friends? Is that class? Again, they have a class issue, but because people don't know the difference between having a class issue and a race issue, they basically put Ebony K. Williams in to solve a problem that wasn't there. And because they tried to solve a problem that wasn't there, it created a problem. It put Ebony K. Williams in a very uncomfortable situation. It was uncomfortable for all of us to watch her have to go through those things. It was uncomfortable to watch her force feed Black history to somebody. And that's kind of the shame in it. You know, do people ever realize that when it comes to other cultures in this country, somehow, somehow the history of everybody knows, right? Everybody knows the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody knows the Constitution. Everybody knows and learns the presidents. Everybody knows, you know, and learns the legislatures, or the what do they call it? The systems of the government. Like, there are certain things that when you grow up in this country, no matter what your ethnicity is, we all learn these same things, right? But yet, when it comes to Black history, most of the time, these are only things we learn. And we learn them because it's about us, and it's important for us to know these things, and know how we were able to come from one place in this country to another place in this country. Okay. And yet those are grievances that no other group of people really have to concern themselves with if they don't want to. Um, and that's basically what we saw on this season. Again, I don't know. I feel like Ebony just has that personality that anybody that she's around, she's going to be trying to teach you something. And she's going to just want to put you on a higher, let's say, intelligence level. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being that person. There's nothing wrong with being a person who can have intelligent conversations about culture and class differences, and being able to speak intelligently about what your experience in this world or is, as far as everything that was happening. See, that cast, that's why I remind you that it's a class issue. When you are in a certain class, when you have a certain amount of money, when you live in a certain place, there are things you can afford to not know. There are things you can afford to not pay attention to. And that is just not any African American woman, man, person's flight in this world. As an African American, it's kind of your duty to know the things about your culture. And yet, other people really get to decide that they can ignore it. And that's what we were dealing with in New York with the New York housewives. Those New York housewives, even through the pandemic, lived in a bubble that nothing that went on during the pandemic affected them. Outside of the fact that we all had a stay-at-home order, outside of the fact that anybody's ability to work may have been compromised with the stay-at-home order. Those were the things that affected them, as it did everybody across the world. Those were the things that were generalized, in which no matter your culture, no matter your status, no matter what that looks like for you in your personal life, we all had to deal with those changes. But where it came to the racial tensions, they could afford to turn a blind eye, to not pay it any attention. They probably had no idea that it was going on, because they don't live in that world, and they can afford to not be in it. They can afford to not pay attention to it. Now, what I can appreciate about Luann being a former countess, and being a little bit what I guess maybe I shouldn't give her this much credit. Luann at least presents herself as a person who is cultured, and able to listen. Okay. Because that's all Ebony really wanted. However, Ramona was giving Ebony the flux the whole season. Okay. The total flux. the whole season. Like you saw in that trailer, she said, I don't really want to be preached to. She looked at Ebony as if Ebony was trying to preach to her. Every time she came around, Ebony was trying to teach her a different thing about the Black culture, and she was not interested at all, not even a small iota, not even a little bit. And again, we get to that dinner, and at first, everything just looks like fun. And it just looks like, okay, hazing, fine. They brought a new girl in. She might be going overboard with different things, but maybe, maybe y'all will get along in the end. At that dinner, there was no way. And we know what happens if you say the wrong thing. And it's not the wrong thing about us, if you say the wrong thing about the other part. And again, going back to the reason why they could not have a reunion, because while you can edit things, while you can cut things down, just as we saw in that episode, because that was cut and edited, clipped. But I've never seen anybody so visibly uncomfortable with discussions of other cultures. I mean, she couldn't even be still. She was shaking. It was so bad. She was shaking. And yeah, that's not somebody you can bring back and think you're going to revisit that topic. Because then if that happens, now you have to make another decision, because now you do have to protect a group of people that Bravo is not used to protecting. And that was even noted. I didn't record it, but that was noted today. I saw a clip of a podcast Andy Cohen did. It goes back to a couple seasons ago on Beverly Housewives during Garcelle's, maybe first or second season. But Garcelle wrote a book. One of the ladies posted an Instagram where she threw her book in the trash. She had gotten mad at the lady for some reason. And so she posted Instagram with the book in the trash. Like, how do you, it was like, how do you read this book or something like that? And it was her throwing it in the trash. It was a way to basically take a dig at Garcelle to let her know she wasn't reading her book. Andy brought it up on the reunion, and instead of concentrating on how hurt Garcelle would be, that I would give you a book and then you go throw it in the trash, instead of focusing on that, because again, we don't get protected. Which again goes back to being interesting that anybody would think that that show was canceled because Ebony K. Williams messed up. Like, no. That network is not protecting the Black women over there. We already know that. That protection was for a different group of people, and not even anybody that was represented on that show. Not anybody who was represented in the inclusion. What it is that the world takes that so much more serious than it does with any of us, that it was easy to just blame it on Ebony. And so I really feel bad for Ebony. Again, that I don't agree. I do agree that Ebony should never have been on New York Housewives. I don't know who talked her into that. And again, I don't know who put that battery in her back to go into this group of women who really just are focused on class and classism, that you should be a part of that group. Because even though Ebony on paper lines up with those ladies, because she has a different set of morals and a different set of a different intelligence level, it just wouldn't fit. They didn't mesh well. And again, as she said in the trailer, like I said, they have a class issue. Countess Luann goes around telling everybody how to act and what's proper and what's appropriate and how well educated she is. But the lady ain't been to college. That lady don't have no degree or master's. She is not Dr. Anybody. The only thing she did was marry well. But again, because that put her in a different place, because she was able to use a title like Countess, that gave her the confidence and the authority to place herself above other people. And so, but if anybody should be proud of the way they handled the season, it would be Luann. So I would give her that much credit, that she was there for the lessons. She was there to listen. Sonya got a little drunk, as she always do, but Sonya was there to listen. Sonya was there to accept Ebony. Sonya was there to let Ebony be Ebony. However, Ramona was not having it. And Ramona single-handedly is the problem. Now, like I said in my comment, it is no surprise to me that once they decided that they were not going to film their reunion and that they would go ahead after about 6 months, they decided they were doing a total reboot. A lot of us was just concerned about, well, what does that look like? We've been, to Dorinda's point, I don't think anybody grew up with them. I think everybody that was watching the Housewives was already grown. Nobody growing up looking at a bunch of 50 and 60-year-old women get drunk and cuss each other out. Just people who are already grown. Trust me on that. However, we've been watching them for quite some time. And when we think about it, all of the Housewives, for the most part, outside of Salt Lake City, and Salt Lake City does not need a reboot because they're pretty fresh. It's another one that I'm thinking about. But you see, Atlanta, I was calling for a whole cast reset. And New Jersey is the other group that's looking at a full reset. And for those they have different reasons for why they're looking for a full reset. However, because the New York reboot, it really was accepted very well. And this is why. The show has been on over a decade. All of the fans, including myself. So you figure, when I started watching The Housewives, I was in my late 20s, and now I am 44. Even my life has evolved. Even my thoughts, my ideas, the things I think is funny, those things have changed. And with that, so does what you watch, right? So does some of the reality. It needs to change and become updated and keep up with the times. What Dorinda said in that interview was absolutely correct. This new cast that they brought on, they represent New York today. When Dorinda, Ramona, Luann, Sonya, Bethany, when they were a part of New York, that represented New York at that time. And that's why, again, I could watch that show and not have an issue with them not having a Black lady on there. Like, it wasn't necessary. I'm old enough to know that, of course, there are Black women in New York. Of course, there are Black women in certain statuses in New York. Were any of them willing to come on that show and do what those ladies were doing? Absolutely not. And the reason for that is, like Ebony was trying to let these ladies know, most of the time you have to work twice as hard and be twice as good. So you don't get the opportunity to fall all over drunk and be all right and be accepted and called back every single year after that. You don't get the opportunity to forget your petticoat underneath your Halloween outfit, bend over, show all your little stuff, and be invited back for 6 more seasons after that. See, Ebony didn't get that opportunity. Ebony didn't do any of those things, but yet Ebony is taking the downfall for the entire show. And that is absolutely wrong. And where Andy is wrong at is him not speaking up for them. So going back to what he said about Garcelle, about that book being thrown in the trash, he had to come back and apologize. He said that he apologized to Garcelle, and now this is public for him to say it that way. But Garcelle had to have a private conversation with him to let him know that he was wrong for focusing on the telephone that was in the garbage can that the lady threw this lady's book in. You turned that into a conversation about if she recycles. You don't recycle? All of a sudden, 5 minutes on, well, I actually do, and my husband actually threw that out a couple minutes before. All of this. Never went back to Garcelle to say, how did you feel about that? Somebody, you worked so hard to write that book, and you give it to one of your cast members, and that's how they treat it? No. Why, you ask? Because they don't think about trying to protect none of us on them shows. They just wanted a filler. And so you got what you gave when it come down to it. But is it Ebony K. Williams' fault? Absolutely not. And so I just got frustrated with the fact that every time this subject comes up, nobody is being very clear that there was a subject matter that was discussed on this season, and those people did not want to go back and discuss it again because they could not control what would come out of Ramona Singer's mouth. And Ramona Singer, if she said the wrong thing, had the opportunity to have their whole network canceled, because that is what should have happened to her. But they just didn't film the reunion, hurried up and we'll bring them out for Ultimate Girls Trip. They pumped that up, and then they pumped out this new cast for Housewives of New York. And so now everybody is looking at this new cast. And like I said, the new cast did very well the first season because you're getting to know them. And everybody's on the same playing level. And nobody can outdo anybody because everybody is starting off from scratch. You got Jenna Lyons on there, but even Jenna Lyons don't think that she's better than anybody because she's starting at the same place in this show, on that status. So the first season did well. We're getting to know these ladies. Second season, not so much. Not so much. Second season, you got one lady on there, Brian, she is mixed. And you have her calling out Uber about being an angry Black woman. And nobody is checking this lady. Like, who do you think you are? Who gave you the right to tell somebody? Because when you don't show up in the world the way we do, you don't get to categorize what that is, and that you worried that somebody might look like that. You better worry about yourself and what you look like, and why you running around here seeming like you're trying to pass. So, again, I just wanted to take this opportunity and get that off my chest, because when it was happening, I wasn't doing my YouTube channel, so I never got a chance to really discuss it out loud. It was just something I was able to discuss amongst my friends and the people who watch Housewives with me. But like I said, that one little clip just sent me over the edge. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get it out there. So hopefully let's tag Ebony K. Williams. And let's hopefully pump her up. Not that I'm sure she is not sitting anywhere upset about New York Housewives, but I do want her to know that there is somebody who is not blaming her for the downfall of Housewives. I know and understand that she didn't have anything to do with it. And I blame those execs at Bravo. I blame Andy Cohen. And I still think that there needs to be a revisited conversation about that dinner. I think there needs to be an honest conversation about the reboot. And I think Andy Cohen needs to speak very candidly about what that is, because we all saw it. And that's the one thing that's the reason why bloggers and things exist, why we do these types of things on YouTube, because it's nothing like watching something and then having the cast come back and tell you that what you saw, you didn't see. What do you mean? Like, my eyes were good. My intelligence level is pretty all right. I might not be on the IQ board, but but I ain't missing it either. So that's the reason why you have people that get on and they recap episodes and they share their opinions, because the point of these shows generally is to come back and erase what you saw. And so I want Ebony to know I got her back. I did not necessarily go up for her as far as being a cast member. I did not think she was a good fit. I did think that was a huge mistake. And not because she didn't deserve to do something on television, but I just understood that was not the group she should have been included in. And that group of women really did tank her reputation, honestly. And now she's left with being blamed for the demise of the show, and it had nothing to do with her. It has to do with the people who make decisions who don't look like us. You make decisions for us, but you don't look like us, and so that means you don't know what is even necessary to appease us. That's another thing companies need to do when they want to go into the inclusion and diversity spiels at their companies. Get somebody that's diverse. And why don't you talk to them about what is it that you think we need to do in this company? What does that look like, for the culture? Find somebody else, find somebody who knows about it, and not just somebody who's in a position to make the decision. Because that's when you get chaos. That's when you have to cancel shows. And that's when you have to not talk about it ever again and act like it didn't happen, because you don't have the words to explain what happened. They don't know what happened. They don't know why Ramona lost her marbles at that table. Now, I'm not calling Ramona anything. What I am saying is she was very uncomfortable discussing other cultures. And that's the only time you see her in that way, because that's the only time it happened. Somehow people got shocked that she voted for a particular president. Who's shocked? Do you know her status? Of course she did. Who's shocked? So of course she was not interested in anything Harlem had to give. Of course those ladies lived in New York for over 30 years and never been to Harlem. Absolutely. Who's shocked? Ebony? Can't be. I wasn't. I'm sure that was the last time they been there. So again, she had no business joining that cast. It was a total disaster, but it's not her fault. It was not just some random decision that the execs decided to make. Of course, everything that Sonya being drunk off her tail happens every single episode. Forget season. Every single episode, Sonya is drunk. We look forward to Sonya being drunk. Okay. Same with Dorinda when she was on there. That's why they had to put her on pause. Because Dorinda would have a DUI if she drove. Dorinda doesn't drive, but she gonna get drunk on every episode, cuss everybody out, and kick them out. So thank y'all for joining me. That's all I got. I'll come back next week and we'll just go dive into this new group of housewives, what they doing this season. I'm really not feeling the season because the stuff they're talking about is real. It's real. For me, they have a different audience. I think I have grown that particular audience, but I do check in with them to see what's going on. But they ain't really got nothing going on. Ain't nothing going on. I kind of do miss the days of just watching those ladies get drunk and argue with each other. Because these ladies are just, they're not getting drunk, but they arguing about what? They arguing about made up pranks. You know, like who was in on the prank and who wasn't on the prank. It's a whole prank. Like, why are we still talking about it 3 weeks later? And why are you holding it against somebody because she told another person about a prank? Yeah, they ain't got nothing going on. That's why they need to talk about what they should have talked about 2 years ago, and that is that Black Shabbat dinner. The Black Shabbat dinner is the reason why New York Housewives had to be rebooted. And if you want to see it, you go to season 13, episode, let me go back, episodes, I believe I said 14 and 15. Okay, episodes 14 and 15. Of course, you can find that on Peacock on demand, Real Housewives of New York. Go watch that episode. Come back to this video, jump down in the comments, and tell me what you think. Watch the whole season if you want to know more, because you'll see everything. You'll see it. Ramona gave that lady so much flack. And again, it was something very similar to what was happening in the world with, I think a lot of people were having hard conversations surrounded by race talk and different culture talk because the climate, it is high now and it was very high then. But they made a grave decision, and instead of just coming out and admitting it, they let Ebony take the fall, and that's not right. That's not right at all. Luckily for Ebony, she can handle it. She's the big girl. She's moved on, gave birth to a baby girl. Congratulations, Ebony. But Ebony is not the reason why New York Housewives had a full reboot. If it had to be on anybody's back, it is Ramona Singer's back or Andy Cohen's back, because those are the two who want to act like this didn't happen. So that's all I got, y'all. That's all I jumped in for, because I just had to get that off my chest. Thank y'all for listening. Again, my podcast is called Who Asked for This? Nobody, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. And thanks for joining me. All right, I'll hit y'all up later. Bye.